Okay, hello everyone. We are just gonna wait a minute to get everyone in who wants to join the workshop. So thank you for coming. We're super excited for this. This is our first virtual garden workshop. As some of you may know, hello everyone. We are just gonna wait a minute to. Oh, sorry about that. Yes, this is our first virtual workshop. We have done monthly garden workshops since October. In person, those have been in smaller groups. So now we are going virtual in the wake of COVID, and hopefully this can help us reach more people. Okay. And so feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. I'm also curious to see how you guys heard about this workshop. So if anyone wants to share either with their voice or over the chat, that'd be awesome because we're always trying to reach out and reach more people. So yeah, that would be great to hear from you guys while we wait for just the last people.
It was in our church newsletter.
Awesome. Are you at First United Methodist Church?
Yes, correct.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm actually, so I'm the community garden coordinator, and I help support Westside Community Garden.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm excited that you're able to join us.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. You have someone who heard about it through Nextdoor. That's great. I love that we're reaching people through different platforms. Okay. So with that, we're gonna wait for our other master gardener to try and join us here, and then we can begin. Thank you for being patient.
It's nice to see everybody here.
Thanks for joining, Nancy.
I've been looking forward to it.
Good. Us as well.
We haven't gardened in almost 25 years, and because where we lived, and we moved into a place with raised beds and a garden.
Awesome. So you need to get ready to prep in it. Mhm. Okay, I think we will get started here. And there may be more people joining, they can just join in as we go. So thank you all for coming. As you guys know, this is the Prepping a Spring Garden Workshop. And my name is Xenia Liederman. I am an AmeriCorps member serving with UC-VEG and Blue Zones Project as the Community Garden Coordinator. So part of my position is to host monthly garden workshops for the public to, provide a space for people to learn more about gardening, new techniques, ask questions, and connect with other gardeners and people in the community. So, like I mentioned earlier, this is our first virtual workshop. We're super excited about it, and we're glad that you all can join. And like I said, if you have to leave early for some reason, or people who want to attend but couldn't make it for this time, we are streaming on Facebook Live at UC-VEG, and we will also be posting the video on our Facebook page and YouTube after the fact, so people can go back and look at it then. Now I'm going to introduce our first gardener who's going to speak. We have Sylvia, and she is with the OSU Extension. So I'm going to pass it off to her.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks so much for attending this workshop. My name is Sylvia Andino, and I'm a volunteer master gardener with the Douglas County Master Gardeners. We have a great program through the OSU Extension Office that's offered every year in winter. It's called our winter course, and it takes place over 3 months, January, February, and March, and we do 1 day a week. And through that 1 day a week over 3 months, you'll get a full excellent course of our Master Gardener program through OSU Extension. It covers more than you could ever imagine. Everything from plant structure, seed structure, plant and tree hormones, right down to vegetable gardening, composting, and all our favorite stuff. As well, we have the Discovery Garden, which I hope most of you already know about. That's out near River Forks Park. And that's a planned learning garden that the Master Gardeners operate. If you haven't been there, I highly encourage you to go out. So that's open all daylight hours, 7 days a week, all through the year. It doesn't ever have any closures unless there's an emergency, or like Snowmageddon, where we had to close because of tree safety. So I am here today to talk to you guys about seed starting, and we have another person coming after me, and she's going to talk more about the generals of gardening, and they really, they should overlap. We might cover a couple of the same topics. I have a presentation here for you. Let me just get it pulled up.
Oh, Nancy has a quick question.
Yes.
When does the 3-month course begin? And if it's already started this year, is it possible to get our names on the list for next year?
Yes, thank you. I was going to cover that at the end. Let's go over that now. That happens starting in January every year, but you do need to register in September. So whoever's going to be doing that course this year, and it will be interesting, this is our first year after COVID, so it's going to take place much differently. I think there's a lot of changes, but it is still happening. And you'll need to register in September. And to do that, you'll just need to contact the OSU Extension Office by phone or their website. Or if you find any Master Gardeners out at our outreach programs, like my husband and I will be at the farmers market during the summer, and other functions that the Master Gardeners are present at, we always have little yellow cards. And those yellow cards are an interest form. And by filling that out and sending that in, or leaving it with your Master Gardener, they'll turn it in to let our office know that you're interested in our programs. And then they'll then send you a packet or an email with all further information that you need. Otherwise, and once you get that information, then you go through the registration process in September and October. So plan ahead. You have to plan in summer if you want to do it in winter. Here is this PowerPoint presentation that was put together by one of our Master Gardeners. Her name is Betty Eisen. I believe she's been a Master Gardener over 30 years. She was one of the first, one of our local members to start gardening there out near out at the Discovery Garden near River Forks Park over 30 years ago. I think before the program even came together, solidified, and was official. So right here we have a lot of in-depth information from one of our most experienced gardeners. Seed germination, the basics. One of the coolest things about seeds is there's only 3 parts, and here it's outlined for you: the seed coat, the endosperm, and the embryo. And that's the shell, the food reserve, and the actual plant information. So it's so small and it's so basic, but it has everything it needs to, what's amazing is, give us food in the end. And now, when you're selecting your seeds, always use the freshest seeds possible. Select varieties that provide what you're interested in for the area you're interested in, adapted to your area. And there's a lot of seeds that either people are hybridizing themselves and developing in their own backyards, or that are passed down locally. Very important, if it's a disease, if it's a vegetable or a plant that is prone to certain diseases, you might want to look into disease-resistant varieties, and you can find those through seed catalogs or other providers. And then pelleted seeds. If you've ever planted seeds, or you're going to learn about it if you're going to plant seeds for the first time this year, that are so small you can barely handle them, just like poppy seeds or even smaller, then you can get a pelleted type. And that includes a biodegradable coating, and it often has a fungicide built into it that will make it easier to handle. It makes it more visible for you, and you can have more control over where you put it and help protect it while it's germinating. And then seed viability. So seeds are amazing, plants are amazing. I think that's why we're all here. Seeds, like it says, living, breathing things, and some seeds live longer than others. So there's a shelf life for seeds, and you want to store them properly and harvest them and dry them properly if you're keeping your own seeds. So viability means whether it's still alive and whether it's still going to germinate. So if you have seeds from 10 years ago that someone gave you, it might be fun to try them out, but more it's more advised to go for a fresher seed from last year or the last couple years that are going to guarantee to give you the plants you want. And here you go, 2 to 3 years. Always store them in a cool place, whether it's a basement, your refrigerator, if you have a garage, but not if that garage is going to heat up over summer, that can degrade the seed viability, and low humidity. So low humidity would be, once you have a secure container to store your seeds, low humidity would be, you can add silica gel or some kind of desiccant package. Those come in electronics, in food that you get, prepackaged food that you get. If you come across those, you can put them in your dehydrator or on a tray in the oven on really low for just an hour, and that will help dry them out. Then store all the dry ones in a container, and you'll have those ready to use for any seeds or anything else. That makes sure to wick and pull away moisture from the air in the container, and that will maintain your seed viability. And again, you can use your refrigerator. And then seed life for some of the most common vegetables that we like to grow in the backyard: 1 year, 2 year, and 3 years, depending on which ones you like to, which ones you want to grow. Now, I remember Halie is going to say the same thing after me, but you can screenshot this if you have the capacity to screenshot on your iPad, on your phone, or if you know how to take a screenshot on your laptop, and you can save this whole shot right here for any of the information you want to keep for later. And now seed profiles. If you're buying your seeds, there's always a label on the back. Almost every company. I mean, I think it might be like a local high school that's packaging seeds might be the only ones that aren't going to have this information on the back. Otherwise, it should always be there. The seed profile, how long it's going to take to germinate, how long it's going to take to mature and grow through the growing season, the light requirements, and how many weeks to plant before the last frost, and any special seed treatments, which is what we're going to talk about next. So take note of that. Might be different from most of your other vegetables, and you want to make sure to plant them all accordingly, not every vegetable you want in one tray. You're going to want to separate it. They might need to be in warmer or darker or lighter areas as they're germinating. And what do we need for seeds? What do we need for all plants? Water, oxygen, light, and heat. Now, water during germination, like you can see here, they must stay moist at all times. If they were to dry out at any point, they lose that seed viability. It really, when you think of embryo, it really must stay in a moist chamber at all times, as that's what really germination is, moisture. Oxygen, a lot of the oxygen is being delivered through the water, and remember, they're living, breathing things. And light, stimulate or inhibit growth. So some vegetables and plants are dark germinators. They don't want a light. They're going to need darkness before you introduce light to the plant. And some need light overhead to create that reach from the soil. And then heat. The heat and moisture together is going to create that optimum germination. If you're using a windowsill or you're using a shelf by a window where you're starting all your seedlings, try to get some sort of warmth introduced. Now, if you have a light over top, that's going to introduce warmth over the top. Ideally, you have some sort of warmth under your seed tray or whatever you're germinating in to create the seed bed, and the soil moisture is where you want to create your warmth. If you're by the window, it could be drafty. You might not want to have it by a window. And if you have anything running in your house already, think about what motors are already running in your home that you're already paying electricity on, and that are already plugged in. Things like your refrigerator, maybe your dryer, or a deep freezer. The motor's warm on the outside, even though it's frozen on the inside. These are all places that you can put your seedling trays while you're just waiting for that initial phase of germination, just to keep the soil bed warm. And eventually you'll transition it into colder environments as the plant grows. Now for light, you can use windowsills and you can use shelves near windows, but I highly recommend getting some sort of indoor light. Now, just incandescence and fluorescence, you know, people have made them work, but we recommend getting a grow light. Now that can be a full long bulb with a whole ballast and a shield that you pick up from a garden store of some sort. That's a grow light, or you can even find the actual screw-in ones that will that are made for plants that will adapt to any of your general light bulbs. You can put an office light over or a reading light over and really mount it over. And you want to start with your light as close to the soil as possible, and you're slowly going to separate them as the plant reaches and create more space between the light and the plant as it reaches. Let's see what's next. Special seed treatments. This is scarification and stratification. This is just a side note on seed germination. Not many of the vegetables that we're going to grow in a home food garden are going to need this. This is oftentimes going to be shrubs and trees. But just a note on that, scarification means you're just breaking the surface of the seed shell to allow water to penetrate. Now make sure not to break it right open, but you're just breaking the surface. And as you can see, you can do that with a nail file, sandpaper, or similar, and then you'll soak it in water and that water will be able to penetrate. And now we have stratification, which just like apple trees need certain number of chill hours to produce a good apple crop. It's the same thing with things like apple seeds. The apple seeds need a certain number of chill hours before they'll germinate optimally. And that goes for a lot of other trees and shrubs. And to do that, you are creating an artificial chill period. You're putting that in the refrigerator or the freezer and keeping it soaked. You can, it depends on what your seed needs are, whether you're soaking them and then chilling them, whether you're chilling them and then soaking them. So you'll want to look into those seed requirements. And seed mixes. This part is so important, as your seed starting mix must be sterile. It's the most vulnerable beginning phase of your seed starting. So it's going to be the most prone to disease, to fungus in the soil that might come in and damage that initial part of the process. So here it says your seed starting mix should be fine textured, uniform, and loose, meaning well aerated, and low in fertility. So just those three parts of the seed were the shell, the embryo, and the endosperm. So all the food that the actual seed needs that the seed needs for germination, the plant is going to need, is already inside the seed. It doesn't need any fertilizer or amendments in the seed starting mix. It has all the food it needs in its seed. You'll introduce that later once your plant develops roots and once the true leaves form and you do your first transplanting, then you'll work up to more fertilization for the vegetables you want to be growing. You can create your own at home. There's some ways to do that. I have sent Xenia a few publications from OSU, and one of them is on how to create your own seed mix, and they'll walk you through that. What is generally happened with seed starting mixes when they're done commercially or by a local nursery is they bake them or heat them in chambers, whether it's a homemade box that you can use to heat your soil, or they have full commercial chambers. They're heating it to neutralize any fungus growth, any other seeds like grass seeds or any type of weeds, to make sure that the only thing that's going to grow is the new seed you introduce and no fungus, insects, or otherwise. So always look for it to say seed starting or seedling mix when you shop at the store. And now containers, just about anything you can think of can be used as a seed starting container. You can get those kits that come with pre-made, pre-formed trays. Those are great because the top tray has holes to allow drainage, and the bottom tray does not, so it will catch the drainage. It's perfect for indoors to make sure there's no leakage or anything like that. Every container you use should have holes. You see some examples here, like some of the kitchen plastics. Always just use a little pinprick and introduce some holes to that. Otherwise, you can't, if there's ever a chance of overwatering, your seedlings could end up rotting because there isn't drainage. And then you can use a cookie sheet or a plastic tub of another kind, whatever you find around the house. Make sure that it's accessible to you. Don't think I can't start seeds because I don't have the proper equipment. You can start it in almost anything. And you'll see here in the center that yogurt or sour cream container is great for labeling your plants. You can take scissors around that and cut it into little strips all the way around, cut out the bottom, use a Sharpie so it doesn't wash away. And those are perfect plastic strips to use to mark every different seed that you're planting or in the different rows that you're planting. Now, these peat or compressed peat pots that are in the right-hand corner here, those are excellent because you can plant them right in the ground after your seed develops in them, after your starts are ready. The only thing to be wary about those is that they do dry out. So keep those in another catch tray, like I mentioned, so that they're always touching a little bit of the drain off water and they stay moist. If your seedling develops far enough into that pot where the roots start growing into the compostable edges and it's allowed to dry out, it will also dry out all the fine baby roots that your start has developed and hinder its growth, and it will fail to thrive after that point. But eventually you plant these right in the ground and the roots grow right through out into your garden. And next, so you'll go from where you're starting your seeds and you might end up transplanting once more before you take them outside. So make sure all your pots have holes, that they're big enough to host the next size of your plant, and they're sterilized. So just like garden soil from your backyard might have fungus or insects or something, any pots laying around from last year might have fungus or insects, which will hinder your vegetable starts. So a little bleach and water or hydrogen peroxide or something similar, whatever works for you in your house, you want to sterilize them and give them a quick non-scratching, just soft surface scrub. Let's see when to start your seeds. So I'm gonna move this over. You can start your seeds indoors and you can start them outdoors. You'll want to do it outdoors much later after frost. Indoors, you want to plan it out. I highly recommend having a calendar just for your gardening, just for your seed starting, not a calendar with your doctor's appointments or the kids' appointments, and having putting that right where you're starting your seeds, or in your greenhouse or by your potting bench or your supplies in the garage or something like that. And that way you can track planted seeds on this day, and you can look at the seed profile on the back of the packet, and it should be ready to plant outside on this day, and it should be mature or it should be fruiting on this day. And you can plug that all into your calendar ahead of time and see if it lines up. It doesn't always line up, where it might be in different regions than where the seed was tested or packaged. So you'll want to keep those notes. And then as you continue every year, you could have a whole profile. Really, you're creating your own documentation as to how the seeds are developing for you. Common mistakes: starting your seeds way too early to where they're busting out of their pots. You don't have time to get them outside. You're still waiting for frost and they're overgrowing indoors and starting to fail because they haven't gotten that full sunlight and that full garden bed to move into yet. And planting all your seeds at the same time. So that's where the calendar comes in, making sure that they're planned out or succession planting. If you're ready to plant, if you want continued greens or herbs like cilantro and parsley or dill throughout the year, you'll want to plant successively every 2 weeks to a month, depending on how you're going to be harvesting them. And outdoors, you can do some a little earlier and some will need to be done after the frost. So look at your profile on the back of your seeds, make sure the timing is right for the seeds that you want to put out. So as soon as the ground can be worked, that's going to be probably before the frost, you can plant things like peas, lettuce, and poppies. And then after, and these are just some basics, and then after the danger of frost, things like marigold, sunflowers, and carrots. And not until the soil has warmed up are going to be some common things like zinnias, corn, beans, and melons. Now you can use a soil thermometer. You can pick one up, or you can use your hand, depending on how deep your soil bed is. Put your hand right inside and just feel it out every day in a different spot. And you'll be able to know when it's warming up. Now I made a note just down here from the Old Farmer's Almanac. Our average last frost date for this area, this is Roseburg Central. It's going to change a little bit as you go north, east, south, or west from the Umpqua Valley, but that's April 5th. So as April 5th comes around, plan on everything getting ready to go outdoors, but check the weather to make sure there's no lingering frost that's going to come up. Every year is a little different. And now I talked a little bit about pelleted seeds, or really, really small seeds that are hard to handle. So some ways to plant, if your seeds are so small, you're going to do what's called broadcast planting, where you're not able to control the spread of the seeds and you're just going to let it roll through your fingers. Now, we have as an example here, a very small little container. So imagine you have a whole tray. You could broadcast plant to a whole long, large tray as well. And you'll separate those later, or you'll thin them later, which means once they go in the garden, you'll plant them in clumps, and then you'll pick out the largest, most successful ones, and you'll thin out all the rest. You can try separating them. That does have to be done before the roots start to intermix when they're pretty young. And the more you handle them, it is likely that you may be breaking tap roots, or they aren't going to survive after being handled when they're so young. Then obviously your bigger seeds are going to fit right into their, they're so easy to handle. You can plant them in rows, or just like this, a few per container, or 2 or 3 per container. And then light or dark, I mentioned that earlier. Read the back of your seed packet or look it up online. You can always call a local master gardener. I'm going to list our information at the end of this presentation. Some are light germinating and some are dark germinating. And good soil contact. Make sure that the soil was watered in before you planted your seeds. Otherwise, it could have air pockets all throughout. And dampening off. So sometimes these things do happen. Remember, we talked about a sterile medium being your planting, your seedling soil mix that you picked out, and having sterile pots, which is wherever you got your pots, whether you bought them or you had them laying around, sterilize them. All kinds of insidious fungus, insects, otherwise can come in and move in and start to grow through your sterile seedling mix, because it was introduced just from the pot. Dampening off is the term referred to when your seeds have germinated and they start to fail to thrive. And oftentimes it is a fungus or an insect. So sterilize, and don't be discouraged. If you still have seeds, try not to start all your seeds at once. If you still have some seeds in the packet, start a new batch right away, and you might be able to still make it. Proper spacing. You can't do that when you broadcast baby seeds. It's a lot harder to have proper spacing. Don't overwater. So you always want a catch tray underneath. And if it's sitting in water too long, pour it off so it has time to drain, it has space and time to drain, and creates better air circulation. Sterilized containers, sterilized medium. Now, hardening off. This is slowly introducing your precious starts before they get outside. So you've put so much work into it. You may have invested money, time, maybe a new light bulb or seed starting kits, and it is sure disappointing if they aren't hardened off properly and they fail as soon as they get outside. So this is slowly introducing them to the weather outside. You've given them a perfect environment. They had all the heat, light, moisture that they needed, but we're really in a protected and sheltered environment, so they don't know wind. You could introduce a fan indoors to strengthen their stems. Otherwise, hardening off, you can start in your mud room. You can start in your laundry room. If you have a cooler part of the house, keep their light with them as you move them to a cooler part of the house, or your garage, keep their light with them as long as they're indoors. And then slowly you can move them, beware of the frost, but eventually you can move them out to a shady side of the house or under a tree in dappled light. Beware of birds, sometimes come pick off your seedlings. Cats like to, they think you put a litter box out for them, depending on how large your seedling trays are. And, you know, maybe ruckus dogs, depending on what the traffic of your yard is like, will come running by and just knock everything over. So be careful where you place them as you're doing that. And eventually they'll be able to get some full sunlight. Just introduce it slowly, a little bit at a time. You start about 2 weeks ahead and you slowly, eventually they're ready to put in the ground and they've been acclimated to that space, that environment, and that light cycle. Same thing, 2 weeks before doing it, and reduce the frequency of watering. You're developing roots. Once the germination has taken place and they've developed their main frame of roots, you want to almost tease the roots a little bit as you slow down the watering. Teasing the roots is you want them to seek water rather than always having what you need. You'll create a stronger plant and a stronger root structure by allowing them to look for water. But if it's so lightweight that it feels like you're lifting air, it might have been too dry. So always keep a little moisture. You want a little bit of weight to your seed container or your seedling tray. So that's it for seed germination. I know Haley's gonna pick it up from here after this. And from the OSU Master Gardeners, we've had a lot of changes this year in terms of COVID, and I know we had to cancel some of our events last year. We are a volunteer member program. So we have some funding through OSU, and the course fees that you pay really just pay for your books and materials. Very little of it goes to actually fund our program. We use our fundraisers for that. A couple of them coming up this year is our Trash to Treasure sale, a really fun rummage sale. It's in a new place this year. This year it's going to be at the Winston Community Center. And then our Plant and Garden Expo. It's previously been held at the fairgrounds, and this year it's going to be at the Discovery Garden at our greenhouses. So the dates are here for those. And if you go to our website, douglascountymg.org, you can click on event details. It's the first thing that pops up when you get to the website. And all the details you need to know are there. Always beware of COVID regulations, what's going on locally, and whatever we have posted at the garden as to how many are allowed in or out of the greenhouses at one time. And we did talk about enrollment for the winter course. That happens in September. You do have to think ahead when you're ready. And we're looking into some different options to offer the course, but currently at this time, the course is offered every Tuesday. So I was very fortunate with my employer. A couple of years ago when I took the course, I was able to ask for every Tuesday off, and that worked out for me. Not everyone can get every Tuesday off or has childcare for a whole 8-hour program through the day. So plan ahead, see what kind of creative options you can come up with to make that an option for you. If you haven't been to the Discovery Garden, please head on out there all year round. If you go out now, you'll get to see a really dormant winter quiet scene, and continue to visit every couple weeks, every month, and you'll see the Discovery Garden develop, change, and go into full bloom into summer. We also have a plant clinic. Our plant clinic is located at the OSU Extension Office, which is just at the corner of the courthouse parking lot. It looks like an old church. It has some old colored windows, and that's also where the course is held, upstairs. And downstairs in the basement, we have a plant clinic. Unfortunately, it's closed at this time, so everything's being done remote. Throughout the year, if you have any questions about your garden, about what trees do I have in my yard, what are these bugs in my yard, we offer plant identification, we offer insect identification. We also offer to test soils. I believe there's a fee, but we can test your soil. and provide a full report for you afterwards. So email us at douglasmg@oregonstate.edu. And we have master gardeners working remotely that are hosting a virtual plant clinic, if you will, and they'll answer everything by email. And my husband and I run the farmers market booth at for Douglas County Master Gardeners at the farmers market, the Umpqua farmers market in Roseburg. And that's like our plant clinic extension, where we do as much as we can right there with you. And you can bring your questions or pictures. We always recommend you bring pictures. And that's it for me. Thank you all for joining me. And we hope to see you later in the year, maybe at the farmers market.
Thank you so much for that, Sylvia. That was great. We do have a couple of questions. I think going back to that 3-month course you talked about at the beginning, is that virtual or in person?
It's been in person. It's not offered virtual at this time. That's something we're looking into adapting to and developing. And that does come, unfortunately, we only have so many options as a branch of Master Gardeners for Douglas County. Really, the guidelines come from OSU. So we have to wait for more permission and more options to develop. And we are looking into that.
Thank you. And then our second question, which this one's kind of a broader question, but I'm wondering if maybe you can hit kind of some of the bigger points around it. But like soil molds, mildew, and pests in the soil before planting, is there certain things that you should do to avoid those or potentially get rid of them?
The first and easiest thing you can do, and I know not everyone wants to spend anything, and you don't have to spend anything to start a garden. But if you can go and get a sterile seedling mix from your garden store, your hardware store, something that says seedling mix, that's going to have 0 to little to no food content in it, no fertilizer. And that's really what's best. You can kill off your plants right away if you're using compost or there's some kind of food content in the seedling mix. So try to go for a prepackaged sterile thing. You can do it at home, and I'm not sure where you have that listed if you got the chance to post that, Xenia, but I did send a link to an OSU publication that talks over how to make your own seedling start mix at home and how to sterilize it. You can do that by putting soil in the oven on really low. I'm not sure the length of time, but there's lots of ways to make sure that it's been baked through and everything's been sterilized, and sterilize your containers.
Thank you. Yes, so Sylvia has sent me a couple of like handouts and resource information regarding some of the things that she talked about. And so I will be putting that in the chat, and then also some of the PowerPoint slides. If you aren't able to like screenshot or don't know how, I will be posting those PowerPoints on the UC-VEG Facebook page after this concludes. So you guys can go there and try to look at those, and then you can have them for the future. So is there any other questions for Sylvia based off of her presentation before we go into Halie's?
Nancy has a question.
This is kind of on the first part of your presentation when you were talking about trees, fruit and nut trees. Is there a landscaper in Roseburg that uses organic dormant spray and that would do a good job on pruning and not cut them back terribly?
Yes, that's a great question, Nancy. Proper pruning is so important. And, you know, at a lot of commercial buildings, medical buildings around town, gosh, I've got to say, once you take the course, you walk around with new eyes going, oh, those weren't properly pruned. Oh, those have been butchered. Oh, no. And there's a great program out of Seattle called Plant Amnesty that I follow. You can find all their videos on YouTube. You can follow their group, and their mission is to stop the mutilation and torture of innocent plants and trees. And they give you some basics of just don't do it. Don't do it. They've actually almost stopped most tree topping in the whole Seattle area through their program. Wow. And one of our, I'm sorry, I don't have his name at the time, one of our presenters in the Master Gardener program always says you top a tree from the bottom. If you think a tree needs to be topped, it needs to come down. Once you top a tree, you're just creating a whole new host of problems. Now that's just tree topping. Pruning gets really specific depending on the variety of tree, but I don't personally have a recommendation as to a landscaper, but why don't you email douglasmg@os, or I think it's oregonstate.edu, and they will be able to provide an official response and also and with their recommendation.
Thank you.
Great. Yes. And I put that email in the chat so you guys can copy and paste it from there as well. And I am starting to put in some of those links into the chat that Sylvia had sent me about all the different OSU resources that are out there. Okay, so if there are no more questions right now, we'll have a chance later to ask more. But now I am going to play. So Halie, she's here on the call via her phone. She doesn't have great connection, so she pre-recorded a video, but if you have questions for her or for Sylvia after the fact, we can get to those after the video. So I am going to play that now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Halie Cousineau, and I work for OSU Extension Services. I am up here in Lane County as the County Pantry Food Hero Coordinator, but I am also the statewide Food Hero Garden Education Coordinator. And I lived down in Roseburg last year. I was the AmeriCorps member for as the school garden coordinator. So definitely, I know where you guys are going, and I hope you like my presentation. This is my email. So if you have any questions, I am pre-recording this. Feel free to shoot me any emails. If I can attend this event, I will be there, but just by phone. So hopefully I'll be able to answer your questions live. But if not, definitely email me on my email. And any of my slides, you can take screenshots of them, and I strongly encourage you to do so for some of the information that I provide. We are talking about early spring and spring gardening today. Okay, so you guys just heard about seed germination and how to start your seeds, how to do inside. Awesome. Now we need to know, where are we going to plant these seeds, when, and what do we actually want to plant? So we want to think about, before you move outside, what seeds do you want to plant? Where are they going to go? You are going to have to think about your soil, your lighting, your placement. Today, I won't be talking about garden placement too much, but I definitely can answer any of those questions either through email or hopefully live by the phone. So one thing I do want to show you a little tip. If you are starting seeds inside and you're thinking, shoot, I really want to grow some taproots like carrots and beets. I love beets, or some, picky flowers. I think nasturtiums don't like to be transplanted. So if you don't want to wait, you can do my little trick where you take a toilet paper roll and you simply cut 4 slots in the bottom of it. And it's kind of like folding a box. I simply just fold one side in, and then I keep folding and I go around in a circle. And then you fill that with soil and you put your seed in there that doesn't like to be transplanted, and you do the correct planting directions according to your packet. And then you water it and you let it sprout and it germinates. And then when it has its true leaves and it's ready to go outside and you do your hardening, you then pop out the bottom and you simply put this in the ground. At that point, your toilet paper roll will be really soft and malleable, and it'll disintegrate into the ground pretty quickly. So try that out and let me know how it goes. I do it pretty often. It's a little cheat that I like. So before we get into more little tricks that I have, definitely I want you guys to think green peas and beans, sorry, when you're planting a spring garden. And then my number one suggestion is for you to make sure you check the frost date wherever you are. If you're not in Roseburg, check where it is. And if you are, of course, in Roseburg, also check. You guys can go to the Farmer's Almanac. That's a very good, trustable website. You can just type in your zip code or write, I think, Roseburg, and we'll come up with a frost date. Now, you definitely want to do that because that will determine when you start your seeds inside, when you transplant your seeds outside, and if you're going to direct seed outside. A lot of seed packets will tell you start this inside 2 to 4 or 2 to 3 weeks before your last predicted frost date. And so you have to know what that is in order to know when you're starting it inside and or outside. So I got this table off of your Grow Your Own publishment, sorry, off of OSU website. It is written by Gail. She is a master gardener for OSU, and it has a lot of great information, but this chart is just really good because it breaks down Oregon into different regions, and it gives you predicted dates of when you generally want to plant seeds. Now, this is a few years old, so the frost date might change a little bit. So these might be a week or two off, just depending. So you do want to check your frost date. And not rely totally on this, but let this be one of your guides. And I'm going to give you more information, a little bit more specific to Roseburg. I made similar tables like this for school gardens, so I'll share that with you if you're interested. These are 2 resources on the right. Again, Grow Your Own by Gail. There's a lot more written information on gardening that's really helpful, and I strongly suggest reading it. It's pretty short, just a few pages, and very insightful. The vegetable gardening in Oregon is the same, and it has a little bit more detailed information about each vegetable that you might want to grow that I think is just fabulous. Okay, so here are my charts or tables that I created. Again, please feel free to screenshot this. I pre-apologize if there's any spelling errors. This is not my edited version, I think. But this just kind of tells you what to do with it. If you can, test your soil temperature. Not everyone does that. I don't do that. But it does help, it gives you a pretty good idea if the ground is ready. So a few tips if you want to get your soil warmer or cooler. On really sunny days, this works in the summertime too. If you want to start planting fall crops in the summer, and you need to cool your soil down, cover it with cardboard or a non-black surface so it cools down the soil. And now in reverse, in early spring or late winter, depending where you are, you probably want your sunniest spot for the soil. And some people will put black mat down to heat it up, but I don't suggest that. Right now, if you cover the ground, it should be covered to reduce water going into it, which I will talk about later, because you don't want your soil completely drenched in rainwater right now, which we do have an issue. So anyway, please look at this. Beets, we suggest starting them in February on the 15th, carrots on the 1st. And so you can always go later. You can start beets on the 20th and 25th. But the first date that you want to start planting them is projected in Roseburg on the 15th. That this is based on last year's frost date. So again, check the frost date. So the next one is just tasks in your garden in February. You might want to cover your crops. If you did have plants growing over the winter, you're probably already doing this. If you're just starting or transplanting anything outside in late spring or in February, you want to cover them with a gouache. It's like a cake tray top, like a glass little jar over the top. You can cover it with plastic. You can hoop it with maybe even a scarf to protect from frost. So definitely in frosty nights, you want to protect your plants. And if they're little baby transplants, you definitely want to cover them. Something that you can do at home really easily, you just get a milk jug and you cut off the bottom, and that can be one of your plastic or your glass container tops that cover and protect your plants. And then you do want to start thinking about your soil. If you aren't directly planting in the soil yet, but you are starting to seed inside, you should start thinking about what your soil looks like, where these transplants are going. If you are making your own compost at home and you have all of your food scraps mixed in, you're going to want to either sift out some soil or dig out from the bottom where it is more soily. and let it sit. So you do want to treat it and let it sit by itself, and just get a little bit more nutritious and have an easier time to break down any of the smaller food particles that might invite pests and aren't ready and fully soil yet. Now this is March, so I'm just going to do this for February, March, and April. The same idea. Please screenshot this if you'd like. It just gives you some dates. It also tells you the spacing and the depth, kind of some suggestions on how to plant these seeds. And the method, it's saying either transplant them from inside, so you're going to want to seed them inside for a few weeks early, or you can direct plant them inside in the ground outside. And I have some notes on the side that should help you out. And there are things like collards or carrots that you continuously plant. I do always suggest continuing planting. So you don't just do one batch of carrots and then you harvest them a month later, or depending how many days they take to harvest. I suggest doing rows of them. So every 2 weeks, plant a little bit more carrots, plant a little bit more beets, and so on and so forth. And that way, every 2 weeks in the summer and late spring, you are pulling your vegetables out of the ground, and you have a harvest almost every week or every 2 weeks instead of just one big go. So your March tasks. You're going to want to start turning over your cover crop if you haven't gone outside yet and put things in the ground. So definitely turn that cover crop into the soil and let it decompose to add back that nutrients that it was missing from previous planting. You're going to want to uncover your beds. If you've covered them with plastic and or cardboard over the winter and that hasn't decomposed, if it is decomposable, then you're going to want to start taking that off so you can start growing seeds in it, of course. Definitely weeding is important. Weed early hard. You don't want to let those roots really develop from those weeds. So definitely weed at the beginning, and then you don't have as much work later. Check your soil. Like I said, if your soil is really wet, then you actually might want to cover it up for a few days, let it dry out. And yeah, no bad, poor drainage is not going to be good for any plant. So we want to make sure your beds aren't too waterlogged. And then some little hint, a little fun fact of mine, mid to late March, late in the month, you can actually start seeding those really nice summer plants. So your tomatoes, your peppers, your onions, your basils, start them inside, get them nice and healthy and big, keep them warm, get them sun, and then transplant them outside later on. But definitely treating those well is always, and early is always the trick to get ahead of everyone else. And like I was saying earlier, the succession planting, start another round in March of those radishes and maybe even peas. You might want to put them in a shadier spot so they don't get too hot. And that is a trick. If you have a cold weather crop that you want a little later in spring, even though it's getting hot, try it out in a shadier area or underneath something that's growing tall, like a sunflower. Okay, so we have April, same thing. If you look at my beets, I made a mistake in my notes and I called them carrots, but the directions are still the same. So feel free to screenshot this. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but it does give you kind of a little hint of what you can be planting when and how throughout April down in Roseburg. So your tasks, slugs are going to start coming out, guys. Stop them early. Call your master gardeners if you're not sure what to use. There are different techniques, but I would just ask your master gardeners what to use. Okay, so second round of carrots and radishes, definitely keep plugging them in the ground. I say even beets as well, because I love beets. Make sure you're adding compost in as you are planting and transplanting outside. You don't want your soil to get unhealthy, because they say healthy soil is what makes healthy vegetables. And that's how you make a healthy plant, is it's all in the soil, guys, and making sure you water it. So if you have nitrogen hungry plants, you can add some coffee grounds. That's a little fun tidbit. Okay, so I do have a few things on flowers. I'm big into companion planting. So I really I really strongly suggest trying out companion planting with your crops. There's a ton of resources on that, and Master Gardeners have a ton. But I kind of wanted to highlight flowers today because those aren't my strong suit, but I love planting them, and I always make them an absolute mandatory in my garden. Although I may not have a flower garden, my vegetable gardens are always mixed with flowers themselves. So sorry guys, it's going the wrong way. There we go. Okay, I knew I was at the wrong spot. Okay, so what flowers? Borage is one, I always put it in there. Calendrial, cosmos, lavender, marigolds, nasturtiums, those are all that I have in my garden without any doubt. Most of them are bug repellent, as you see for some of them, like calendrial, they do attract aphids. But if you put them across your garden in a location with plants that are not aphid friendly, then you can send all the aphids over to the calendrial while your kale and your peas are on the other side of the garden hiding. And so they call it a flower trap, or using a flower as a trap. You attract the bad bugs into an area where your plants aren't actually at. So that's a little trick, but you can also just use flowers that repel bugs in general or attract really good ones. So some of these attract bees and other healthy pollinators for your garden. Some are deer repellent, like lavender. Marigolds, I think, are just wonderful. I put them everywhere in my garden. They repel bugs and they help the soil they help repel bugs under the soil if you leave the roots in. And sometimes they help repel rabbits if you have any issues. Nasturtiums are another one. You can eat them just like borage. So they help with the bugs and they're flavorful. Definitely take a picture of this. I will say most of these, I believe all but nasturtiums, love warm, sunny areas. Nasturtiums can be a cooler weather crop. So early spring, late fall, all throughout the summer. They do not love overwatering, and they don't need to be in a sunny spot. They can be some sun, some shade. It's okay. Or water. They do like sun, but not too much, but they definitely don't like too much water. Sorry about that. Okay. So another flowers, sunflowers. Of course, we all love sunflowers. Sweet peas, do not eat them. The seeds are poisonous. However, they attract a lot of pollinators, so they can be good for your garden. But if you have a kid running around in it, maybe don't use sweet pea. These are my other flowers, zinnias, and then the other suggestions: rosemary, sage, elderberry, echinacea. Those are all plants that are delicious and tasty, and they have benefits for you when you eat them, and they look good in your garden. So things to consider when you're doing this. Where is your garden going is definitely important. Is it sunny? Is it south facing? Does it have a lot of rain? Is there a way to cover it when it's cold out? Is it close to your house, or do you have to trudge really far away and pull the plastic over and off of it for cold nights? But then also, where are you going to put your plants in your garden? What was planted there last year? You don't want to put two nitrogen hungry plants in the same spot. Never plant a tomato in the same bed every single year. You'll attract pests. So rotate, bring those flowers in, bring some companion planting in, and rotate where your plants go. And that's a huge thing. Companion plants can help each other, help the soil, and then help reduce pests, because pests will come back to the same place every single year. So if you change where your plants are, it will help mitigate some pests. Okay, and then like I said, make sure your soil isn't soaking wet, and if it is, try to dry it out before you put your plants in there. My last thing that I want to talk about is the Grow This Challenge. Here's the link below. It goes live on March 1st. We're mailing out seed kits, which will hold 4 seed packets, 1 cool weather crop, 1 summer crop, 1 herb, and maybe an edible flower, and then a flower crop. So you'll get those for free. You'll have to pick them up at your extension office unless your specific county may have other pickup locations. So contact your local extension office about this. Go to our Grow This website and sign up. Email me with any questions. And yeah, you'll get information from me and silly videos of me trying to tell everyone how to garden at home with what they have at home. And it's tons of fun. So if you have any questions, please, hopefully I'm here in person to answer on the phone. If not, they will write them down and I can answer them later, or maybe Sylvia can answer them and put some in the chat. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you listening.
All right. Thank you, Halie. So now we are going to answer, let's see if there's any questions. I see Sylvia was answering some of them while you guys were away. Yeah, so does anyone have any questions at this point? I'm going to check the Facebook, but for Zoom, if anyone has one, feel free to go ahead and ask it.
This is Halie here too. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. I figured it out.
We go. Okay. Well, no questions on Facebook then. Okay. If there's no other questions right now, we thank you guys so much for joining us. And like I said before, I will be posting some of the resources that Halie and Sylvia shared with us during this time onto our Facebook pages. If you would like to get it directly to email, put your email in the chat and I will directly send you those things so you can see those. So you can have those. And yeah, I also wanted to share a little bit about some other upcoming events that UC-VEG and Blue Zones Project are working on. There is a Wine at 5 trivia night that I'm hosting with Nico, the other AmeriCorps serving with Blue Zones Project. And for that, it is just a trivia night. We will have it on Zoom, and you guys can come and bring a drink of your choice, whether it's alcohol or something else, and just have a fun little trivia night. And that's on February 5th at 7 p.m. We do have the event on our UC-VEG page, and we will be giving out prizes for the winners. So we hope to see you for that. And I will also be holding another gardening workshop in February. The exact topic is still a bit TBD, as well as the date. We are thinking end of February, and we haven't decided if that will be in the Westside Community Garden or virtual again. But stay tuned for that because we will be posting and have other ones. So yes, we thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.